evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ken Krawchuk. I was the Libertarian Party candidate for governor of Pennsylvania in 1998 against Tom Ridge, in 2002 against Ed Rendell. On behalf of the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania, I would like to welcome you to the 2016 presidential candidates debate. This, as I said earlier, is a momentous year because so many people are so disaffected with the two old party candidates. There's only one place they can go. Next to Hillary and Donald, we are the moderates this year. I'm predicting a record turnout. But that depends upon one thing. Who is going to be our candidate? Who can best monopolize this situation? Who can take advantage of it? Who is the person who's going to help drive the Libertarian Party from being the third largest party in America to the second? One step at a time. Tonight we will find out. I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Charles Perarlo. He is an inventor. He's a founder of Pivot Foods, inventing brand new food types of things. He's also the co-founder of Libertarian.com, and he's going to be leading the hard questions. Please join me in welcoming Charles.
Well, I would say I'd have some hard questions, but I don't see Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, or Hillary Clinton on the stage. So I think I see four nice libertarians who hopefully will play kind of nice. Hopefully. So just to set everything off, I don't think I can really make an introduction besides what Ken said, besides the fact, hey, 1/3 of Bernie supporters have decided that they don't want to be voting for Hillary Clinton. 1/3 of Republicans have said they do not want to be voting for Donald Trump. And all I have to say is, what the hell happened to the other 2/3 of the Republicans? So just to do some basic introduction, first off, we have radio host Darryl Perry. We have Governor Gary Johnson, who was also the 2012 nominee. We have Dr. Anesthesiologist Dr. Mark Allen Feldman, and then we have engineer, lawyer, patent attorney, Mark.
Derek Michael Reed.
Yes, you like to introduce yourself.
I always use my full name.
I interviewed him earlier. He loves to introduce himself, so that'll be great. So to do a little bit of introduction on our panelists, we have Hesham El-Miji, that is a difficult name to pronounce, who is the head of the Staten Island Libertarians and also the founder of Muslims for Liberty. Next we have speaker and writer Josie Wales, and next we have Larkin Rose, who is a writer as well for Liberty, and I can assure you Larkin will be asking some fun questions tonight. But to start things off, I actually, from the internet and from some people who provided very nice questions for us, here is Mike Mazzarone, who's also from BeingLibertarian.com, to just do some openers for the questions.
Yes, this first question is going to be from everybody, and this is from the Being Libertarian Facebook page. What would you do to show people that libertarianism is not radical and for everybody? And what would you do to introduce libertarian views to mainstream voters in order to win their support?
And also every question for the candidates will be 60 seconds on their rebuttal, and they have a sign if they want to do another rebuttal to the other candidates, which I'm sure would be fun. They will get 30 seconds on that, and we will have a timer over there. They will put yellow for when they're in the 45-second range, red for when they're at a minute, and there's going to be a very special 200-year-old bell that Larkin provided that's going to be some fun tonight. So we are bringing antiques. Okay, so Darryl, please start with that.
And the question again, what would I do to show people that libertarianism is not radical?
Not radical for everybody, and how would you bring libertarian views to mainstream voters and win their support?
Basically, how do you make somebody who watches The Celebrity Apprentice appreciate libertarianism?
Well, first you need to get a libertarian on Celebrity Apprentice in order to get a libertarian in front of them. But absent that, what you need to do is consistently as possible promote the ideas of liberty. And what exactly are the ideas of liberty? Well, the ideas of liberty are that you own yourself and that you are in absolute control of yourself. that every human being has the same rights as every other human being. It doesn't matter where they're from. Everybody has the right to life, liberty, and justly acquired property. No one has the right to take that without cause. No one has the right to initiate force against another person without just cause, meaning that you have the right to defend yourself, but you can't aggress against anybody else. And that's not radical at all, because that's how 99.9999999% of humans interact on a daily basis.
Governor Johnson.
Well, very simply, I think that the majority of Americans are libertarian. They just don't know it. I've been pointing people to the website isidewith.com. In 2012, on the iSide website, I was the next president of the United States based on people being in line with what it was that I was saying. Now, this year, iSidewith has screwed up their website. I got on it the other day to take the test, and I sided with myself 90% of the time. So
Maybe you just don't know yourself that well.
But essentially, a libertarian is a classic liberal. I dare say that the majority of people in this country are classic liberals, and speaking with a broad brushstroke, that's being fiscally conservative and socially liberal. That's the notion of balancing the federal budget, that's keeping our spending in line, and it's reducing the size of government. Government is too big, it tries to accomplish too much, and that should be cut back. And it's personal liberties and freedoms that should be celebrated and acknowledged.
Dr. Feldman?
Dr. Feldman.
I think that we are radical. Radical does not mean extreme. Radical means going to the root. We are not better than Democrats and Republicans. We are very different. And so is America. Americans are sick of politics being run by politicians. They don't believe them. They don't trust them. It's not that they're not saying they're not saying the right things. It's because they don't believe what they're saying. What we need to do is not to bring America to us. We need to go to them. That's why in my campaign, I'm trying not to speak so much about limited government, but unlimited individuals. Control is a zero-sum game. If we can empower the individual, we will take the power away from the corporations and the government. Thank you.
Liberty and freedom. Minimum government. Maximum freedom. Tolerance. These are wonderful, beautiful words. And 90% of Americans will love them. The problem is packaging the message. When you talk about owning yourself, you lose everybody. What you need to do is to translate libertarianism into a form that people will understand and be appealed to. You then have to package that with a solution set to solve their real problems. When you can appeal to them through a message that they want to hear and solutions that attract them, you now have a winner. When people talk about balancing the budget, they got no clue as to the insolvency problem. It's message and it's solution set. Thank you.
Okay, so this question actually followed up to one of our panelists. So we decided to start with the best looking person on the stage. I'm sorry, Larkin, that's not you. Josie, you have the first question.
Okay, this question is for everyone. If you become the nominee for the Libertarian Party, do you believe you have a realistic chance of being elected president? If not, is this a yes or no question? If not, what do you want to accomplish by running this campaign?
Well, let me start off by saying that yes, I wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't the opportunity to win, and that is going to be the Libertarian nominee. I'm suing Our America Initiative, Bruce Fine, we're suing the Presidential Debate Commission. And so what everybody needs to recognize is that the Libertarian nominee may very well be on the national debate stage, and that can be a real game changer. Now people ask me, well, what are the chances of your winning? Well, there's 0 if you don't file, and we've filed. So that is a possibility. Outside of winning the lawsuit and being in the presidential debates, the Presidential Debate Commission has said that 15% in the polls will get you in the presidential debates. With Hillary as the nominee and with Donald Trump as the nominee, come on, if that doesn't present an opportunity to be at 15% for the third party, which is the Libertarian Party, I don't know if it ever happens.
And just to note, Ross Perot was able to make that threshold, so one of the people here should be able to do that.
Well, and point of clarification, the 15% threshold was not in place in 1992 when Ross Perot was invited to the debates. And the governor brought up a good point that you do need to poll at 15%. And that's incredibly difficult to do when you are not included as an option in the polls. And one thing that the governor did in 2012 that I thought was very interesting is he had an organization actually do some polling where it included him and either Romney or Obama, and he got over 15%, and the CPD said, yeah, those polls don't count. So my guess is that if they do start including the Libertarians in the polls, they'll say, yeah, those polls don't count either. So the chances of winning without being in the debates is 0, and the chances of being in the debates absent winning the lawsuit is slim. So what I hope to do is to promote the ideas of liberty as boldly as possible, as often as possible, and consistently as possible, and to give as many people as possible the option to vote for an actual libertarian.
Doctor, I think we have you.
I look at the Libertarian nomination as a microcosm, an example for the general election. So we know that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have the name recognition, they have the money, they have the experience, but they don't have the principles or the integrity. I don't have $1 million. I don't have name recognition. I'm a nobody. But nobody tells the truth, and nobody has a plan to move America in the right direction. So I am Mark Allen Feldman, nobody for president. Woo! Thank you.
Was that an endorsement of NODA?
If NODA was a candidate, I would in the general election, I would probably endorse NODA.
Well, you could have supported Martin O'Malley, and you definitely would have had nobody for president. And Derek, you're up.
Many complain about decreasing membership, lack of ballot and debate access, party stagnation, election defeats, lack of MSN coverage, low funding, crazed fringe image. These are not the problem. These are symptoms of the problem. The problem is getting the right message out there with the right solution set to attract the voters. Gary Johnson is the problem. I have gone coast to coast and I have seen the pathetic turnout of libertarians at state conventions. There are 13 million people in Pennsylvania, and how many are here? 50 maybe? That is pathetic. It's because we have a loser messenger in Gary Johnson. He can't package the message, and he cannot attract the voters.
Okay, I'm gonna hop in here.
Hold on.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm actually gonna hop in here. The question was, and this is again directed to all 4 of you. Obviously, obviously, everyone has a chance. If you win the nomination, everyone on stage, everyone on stage has a chance of winning the nomination. When you win the nomination, you win a chance of being president. That wasn't the question. Do you believe you have a realistic chance? Is it probable? That was the question.
If I'm nominated, I will win. If any other candidate is nominated, they will lose. It's as simple as that.
By the way,
30-second rebuttal, please. I want to thank again for inviting me, and oftentimes people compare us to the Democrats and Republican parties, but what we really should do is compare us to the socialists, the communists, the Reform Party, parties that have come and gone. And I want to thank each one of you here. We've been here since the 70s, and we're still here, and we are growing. Thank you.
And by the way, I think
To reiterate, the possibility exists. That's what we all need to understand. Like I say, I'm asked the question often, what are the chances? Well, the chances are zero if you don't launch, in this case, this lawsuit. The lawsuit's been launched. Just keep in mind when it comes to your picking the Libertarian nominee that this could be front and center stage. This could be the biggest game changer in American politics in the history of American politics.
By the way, we are trying to keep the responses a little bit limited, so just trying to keep that under control going forward. But the next question is from Larkin, and please go.
Start with something basic. What does being libertarian mean to you? Specifically, how do you define the term?
And let's start with Darryl Perry.
I define the term libertarian as meaning someone who subscribes to libertarian philosophy. And libertarian philosophy is that philosophy that I described earlier, that you are in control of yourself, that you have as many rights as everybody else, and that is the right to life, liberty, and justly acquired property. You do not have the right to initiate force against any person for any reason that is unjustified. Now, you do have the right to defend yourself and defend your property and defend your neighbor if your neighbor would so choose your assistance in defense. But you do not have the right or the authority to either initiate force or advocate for the initiation of force, meaning that you can't advocate somebody go take stuff from your neighbor to do things that you like.
And let's go to Governor Johnson next.
In 1972, I got a book, and it was a very short book, and it said, here's what it is to be a libertarian. I read that book in 1972 and immediately identified myself as a libertarian. No ifs, ands, or buts. And then the book said, if you believe in what you've just read, pass it on. So I passed it on. The first presidential candidate that I voted for as a libertarian was Bergland against Reagan the second term, because Reagan blew the lid off of deficits. So for me, libertarian has always been fiscally conservative. The notion of smaller government, less taxes, less government, less regulation, empowering you and I as individuals to be able to do whatever it is that we want to do as long as what we do doesn't negatively impact others. Speaking with a broad brushstroke, that is being fiscally conservative, that's being socially liberal. If you Wikipedia classical liberal, that's what you're going to read.
And next we have the good doctor.
Everybody wants liberty for themselves. The difference is libertarians want liberty for everybody. I honor the non-aggression principle as a moral and ethical imperative. But the problem I see is it's used as a political principle because it tells you what not to do and really doesn't guide you as well to tell you what to do. I proposed a second column to hold up the libertarian philosophy, and that is the positive empowerment principle, that it is our duty to maximize the power of all individuals to control themselves, their property, and their environment as long as they're not infringing on the rights of others. Thank you.
And let's have Mr. Reed next.
The Constitution does not speak to liberal values or conservative values. It speaks to liberty values. The two parties have concentrated totalitarian, socialistic, fascist power in D.C., enslaving our countrymen as tax mules, perpetual debtors, and state dependents. With theory aside, you look at the practical realities. Any individual who desires increased in liberties and freedoms in their lives from the power concentration in D.C., I would consider libertarian. I paint a much broader brush. I am looking for a big tent party and not a narrow spectrum definition in theory. And so I would appeal to 90% of Americans with my practical perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next question goes to Hesham.
Candidates, the slogan of the Libertarian Party is the party of principle. Do you think a Libertarian candidate for president and for any office can sacrifice a principle or more of liberty for gaining a few more votes?
And let's start off with our last nominee for this one, Governor Johnson.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to keep your eye on the ball, which is the principle. I say that's Z. We're at A. Let's keep our eye on the ball, which is Z, which is principle. But in that context, and having served as governor of New Mexico for 2 terms, it was always my mode of operation as either a signer or a vetoer of legislation. And by the way, I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined, so this was a pretty skeptical process on my part. I had thousands of line item vetoes, but all of that said, I always gauged everything on, okay, we're at A, we want to get to Z, but you know what? If I'm presented with D or E or F, I'm signing off on it because it's making things better. So in the context of the party of principle, yeah, that's who we are and that's who we want to be, but we're going to make things better. We're going to always sign on to making things better.
And the next I'd like to ask that to is Mr. Reed, because you've had quite a bit to talk about regarding principle.
The president swears an oath to uphold the Constitution, defining a federal government with 50 sovereign states. He must operate within that confine. The idea is to allow the expansion of liberties within the context of federalism, and that means federal powers and state powers. You address increases of liberties and freedoms with respect to the Constitution, which is the body of law under which the president works. Theory is great, but practical solutions must be addressed and solutions fashioned within the constitutional framework. I'm capable of doing that. None of the other candidates can. Thank you.
Mr. Perry, please go.
So if we're at A and we want to go to Z, and Z is absolute liberty, then as a libertarian candidate, we should always advocate for Z. Should we accept D or B or even W as a step towards Z? Certainly, but we should never advocate D or B or W or even Y. We should advocate for Z. We should advocate for total liberty, every issue, every time.
And next up, Dr. Feldman.
For a libertarian to win the presidency will require a revolution. But revolutions happen. Revolutions are drastic changes in the way people think. Revolutions always seem impossible before they happen and inevitable afterwards. Yes, we have a chance, but it's not going to be by compromising. Before Barack Obama became president, I was concerned that he had a set of principles that were dangerous for America. After his first term, I felt much better because I realized he had no principles at all. The Democrats and Republicans are much better at compromising principles than we are. If we're going to win, it's going to be on our principles and integrity. Thank you.
Thank you, and now we go to Josie with the next question.
In the interest of time, and because Mr. McAfee is not here, I'm going to pass this question and let Larkin go.
Okay, Larkin, get ready, set, go.
All right, we hardly ever hear actual philosophy in political debates, so brace yourself. Isn't democracy itself, where the majority assumes the right to vote to force its will on the minority, contrary to the non-aggression principle? And doesn't that mean that running for office reinforces the idea that whoever gets the most number of votes has the right to rule?
And I think
Can
that
I
the best
answer this
I think
first?
the best person to answer this is you for first.
So your faults on your definition of democracy. Democracy is not the majority ruling over the minority. Democracy is a minority ruling over the majority. Because you don't have a majority of people showing up to vote, and even if you did, you don't have a majority of those people that are actually voting for what they're getting. So you have a plurality controlling the majority. So yes, democracy absolutely is antithetical to liberty. The reason that I am running for office is not to get elected, but to spread the ideas of liberty, and to do that as consistently as possible.
Governor Johnson.
Well, something that most Americans don't understand is that we are not a democracy. Under a democracy, the majority votes themselves a raise, and you end up bankrupt. Now, we are pretty well modeling, actually, a democracy where we are voting ourselves in into a raise, and it's unaffordable, and that's the position that we're finding ourselves in. But we are a country that's governed by laws, so we are a republic. We're a country governed by laws, and those laws are the Constitution. So we are a constitutional republic. We're not a democracy.
Dr. Feldman.
Well, I may be the only, I don't know if I'm the only philosophy major up here. Democracy is not the rule of the majority. Democracy is rule by the will of the people. If 60% of the people want something done and it's done, that's only democracy for the 60%. It's not democracy for the 40%. If everyone gets to keep their money and spend it the way they choose to, that's democracy.
Philosopher and doctor people.
And if I can just add, we're a democracy when it comes to electing our officials. That is what we do democratically.
And to respond to the governor, we used to be a government, a country ruled by laws. We're now an oligarchy. We are ruled by multinational corporations and wealthy special interests. We have a representative government, but they do not represent us. We can change that.
And I'd also like to give a little bit of a moment for Dr. Feldman, the first candidate ever to commit just to only allowing people to donate up to $5. So I think he deserves a little bit of applause for that commitment and that dedication there. But the next question but please, Mr. Reed, please go.
I'm the only candidate that requires a minimum donation of $2,500. I will not take, I will not take someone's last dollar when they're having trouble paying rent and buying food. No, thank you. The philosophy, the principle, the theory is nice for ballroom discussions or barroom discussions. The practical reality of administrating a government must come into play. Our founding fathers did the best they could and set forth a constitution, which is a federalism with individual states where majority votes rule, and of course they necessarily would therefore do violence over the minority. But it was and is still today the only practical solution in administrating government. Thank you.
And with the minimum of $25, now I know why my patent attorney fees are so high. And Darrell, please.
So there's been talk about constitutional republic, and there's a country that has written in their constitution equal right in all spheres of state and public activity. They recognize the freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly, association, petition, and even the right to travel, and the right to privacy. That country, North Korea. You can cite that, or you can go source that yourself, Chapter 5, Section 65 through 75 of the North Korean Constitution. Yes, they're a constitutional republic, but those people aren't free by any stretch of the imagination, and neither are we.
Kim Jong would be very unhappy with that statement. But next up, we move on to general libertarian principles. And Hisham, you have the first question on this.
Candidates, do you believe the involuntary taxation is legitimate and moral, and why? Involuntary taxation is legitimate and moral, and why? Mr. Perry.
Absolutely not. No one has the right to take from someone else without consent. And that means that it doesn't matter if everybody in this room agrees to take the governor's shoes or his car or anything else. It doesn't make it right. And just because people get together and call themselves a government and vote to take people's stuff, it doesn't make it right. All forms of involuntary taxation are theft and should be absolutely abolished.
Well, the shoes the governor have look very comfy right now, but I think he's up for the next question.
Well, I am advocating eliminating income tax, eliminating corporate tax, and by doing that, you could also abolish the IRS. Back to the earlier question, I think there is a silver bullet to what's happening in this country. There are a couple of silver bullets. One is term limits. I think that if you limited individuals to the amount of time that they could serve in office, that they would do the right thing as opposed to whatever it takes to get reelected. And then if there were no IRS, if there were no corporate tax, if there were no income tax, pink slips would get issued to 80% of lobbyists in Washington because that's why they're there, to garner their special favors. Your question, I know, is philosophically, are taxes okay? I will tell you, if you don't pay your taxes, as principled as it might be to not pay them, if you don't pay them, you're going to end up in jail. And so I would pay them. That's not to say they're right, but that's the reality.
Dr. Feldman, you're up.
I would say that all taxation is theft, whether it's voluntary or not. And the reason is, the worst theft is when you deceive people into thinking that what belongs to them really does not. If you can convince people that their property belongs to someone else, then you can get it to give them up voluntarily. That is the worst type of theft. I hear from Bernie Sanders talking about what government should do with the government's tax money. It's not the government's tax money. It's your money. It's my money. The silver bullet is to demonstrate that we should control the tax money. How do we cut taxes without hurting people? We do it through my silver bullet, which is the balance and credit plan. Balance the budget and keep it balanced. And number two, change all charitable deductions to dollar-for-dollar tax credits. If you don't want to send $1 to the IRS, you don't have to. You can support the country the way you decide.
And the doctor clearly has some remedies for people feeling the berm. So next question, so please, Mr. Reed, you're up.
When you're running for president, you have to swear to uphold the Constitution, and that means the federalism with respect to the federal government and the state government. They cannot operate without some funding. The idea is to have the simplest tax regime possible so as to maximize liberty and freedom of the people. And with respect to that minimum oppressive tax regime, you would still need a downsized IRS. When people talk about abolishing the IRS or balancing the budget before solving insolvency, they are simply pandering and have no clue of the economic realities facing the country. Thank you.
The Libertarian Party, the party where you go when the other parties are saying how high taxes should be, we talk about should we have taxes. So, and on that encouraging note, Josie, you have the next question.
Okay, this is a tough one. Kinsella's not here to weigh in on this, so it shouldn't take as long. But very briefly, what is your view on the concept of intellectual property?
And I think having a patent attorney, Mr. Reed, you should go up first for this one.
I have spent 15 years interviewing the top scientists and engineers in this country. You need an incentive for people to expand the treasury of knowledge with their inventions and writings with a limited period monopoly. This goes back, I believe, to the 17th century, and it works. Inventors are motivated by the monopoly that the patent grant gives them. If you take that away from them, there would be no incentive to work 24/7 to come up with the new invention. And people who buy products covered by inventions, they see the royalties increase of the products, and they complain. But that product wouldn't be there unless the incentive was embedded in the first place. 17 years is an appropriate length for a monopoly, and it works to incentivize inventors. Thank you.
And I think to get a different opinion, Mr. Perry, you should go next.
When Henry Ford created, or I guess streamlined, the automobile, production of the automobile, he was not able to patent his techniques. He was not able to patent the final product that he created. And well, about 20 years later, I don't think anybody is thinking the automobile is going away because people can't patent it. The idea of intellectual property is completely absurd because it's not only claiming that you own a product that you invented or created, it's claiming that you own every derivation of said product, even if somebody has the idea at a completely same time in a completely separate setting. And it also claims that you own the brain waves and the neurons of someone else who has the idea and tries to use it in a similar way. Ayn Rand was completely wrong on intellectual property.
And next up, let's have Dr. Feldman answer this question.
As I'm a physician, I've been in practice for about 30 years. I've seen huge changes, and I'm aware of the history of medicine. I would say that nearly all of the advances of medicine, the new techniques, the new any of the new things that physicians do are not intellectual property. We don't do it because we want to make money at it. We do it because we think it's going to make things better for people. And I think it's also true in technology. Howard Aiken, one of the early computer founders, said, if you have a new idea, don't worry about people copying it. If your idea is any good, you're going to have to ram it down people's throats. Something new is exciting, that people will do it. The question shouldn't be, is intellectual property a good idea or not? The question is it a proper role of government? The answer is no.
And Governor Johnson, you're next.
Well, so intellectual property is with us, and keeping your eye on the philosophy, which, as far as I'm concerned, there's too much protection of intellectual property. That it's not all original thought at all. That all of us may engage in that same thought at the same time, and just because one person gets granted that intellectual property, they're granted riches beyond imagination forever, and that's not right. But I hear Dr. Feldman say nearly all of what I've seen from a medical standpoint is not intellectual property. Well, what I'm hearing him say is that maybe there is some that is. And so I'm kind of in the camp that believes that there's too much of it, but I'm in the camp that also believes that maybe some of it is warranted. So back to your role as president or governor, you're going to get to sign or you're going to get to veto legislation. In this case, are you going to try and roll back intellectual property and the attachments that go along with it? Yes, I'm going to try and do that.
And just to show of hands, which ones of you favor some form of intellectual property? Raise your hand right now.
Well,
all four of you, raise your, of the four of you, if you support some form of intellectual property, raise your hand. Four of you, I believe, Mr. Reed, you're included on that. And if
Yes, I'm very strong for intellectual property.
And Mr. Perry and Dr. Feldman, you guys are not in favor of it.
Absolutely
Correct.
not. Everything I publish is under either a Creative Commons or a copyright license.
So,
I will say that there is some things in medicine that were developed with intellectual property, but I think it was done in spite of it, not because of it. Thank you.
so really 2 against 2. This shows how big of an issue this is in debate and in the liberty movement right now. But next we have Larkin with a question that I think is going to get a little bit of roars.
And I would ask that you specifically answer these questions before you elaborate. First of all, do you consider yourself a proponent of the non-aggression principle? And second, do you believe the Constitution is compatible with the non-aggression principle, particularly the taxing clause?
And let's start with Darryl Perry.
To answer the first part, yes, I do my best to abide by the non-aggression principle. And regarding the Constitution, it has either authorized such tyranny as we have or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist.
And let's go to Governor Johnson.
Well, I do believe in the non-aggression principle, but I also think that, and I'm not picking on the question at all, but this is one of those questions where America, or me anyway, it just goes over my head, and I'm sorry. But it does. It's not something that I engage in conversation with people, and if I do, they just glaze over. So the fact that government should not be engaged in force, how that's relative to the Constitution, I can't answer the question. I'm not smart enough to answer the question.
Okay, I just want to hop in here. The non-aggression principle is a basic libertarian principle. So if you're going to run as a libertarian candidate, you should be able to answer that question.
I know I should, but I can't. And this
Fair
is
enough.
Yeah, no, I can't.
I don't-
Well, excuse me, since it was my question. I didn't ask whether you approve of the Constitution. I asked whether the Constitution is in line with the non-aggression principle. Let me clarify. As someone who spent a year in a cage for not paying tribute to the IRS, can you tell me whether you think the Constitution is in line with the non-aggression principle?
No, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I hear your frustration, but these are the questions that I think get people is you knee-jerk the answer, and then you end up you end up having to explain something that you can't explain. I can't. Obviously, fervently, you believe in what you're asking, but it's not something I relate to. I'm sorry, it's just not. It just goes right over my head.
And I'd also point out that Austin Peterson and John McAfee, who could not be here today, they have taken similar views to Governor Johnson on this issue, as well as Bob Barr, who's the 2008 nominee. But Dr. Feldman, you're up.
Well, I won't claim that I'm smarter, but I'm interested, so I think about it a lot. The Constitution is not great because it was invented by geniuses, and I don't think our principles are great because they agree with the Constitution. I think the Constitution is great because it agrees with our principles, and there's a reason for it. Because the founders of this country were in revolution against concentrated power of a king, and it was designed to protect us against concentrated power. And the reason it fails isn't because of the Constitution, it's because of people ignoring the Constitution or trying to twist it into something it is not. The Constitution says our government only has the right to pass laws that are necessary and proper. Now, I don't want to say that which group should be able to get the government to choose. I think we need to take powers away from the government one at a time. I don't want to tell the government, leave us alone. I want to tell the government, relax, we got this.
And Mr. Reed, you are up for this one. I think you're excited to be up for this one.
Of course, taxation, a forcible taking under threat of imprisonment is an aggressive act against the people. The practical reality is that governments need to be funded and they need a revenue stream. The idea is to minimize government and so doing minimize that aggression. No, I would not advocate eliminating all taxes. I would minimize government so as to reduce the oppression under practical realities. Thank you.
Please go.
Just a quick rebuttal. I would say I agree the government needs a revenue stream, but I hope we could also keep them to a $5 maximum.
Well, and we were all such fans of Abraham Lincoln, so So let's see. We're now moving on to political policies. So the wonks in this room might have a little bit more fun. And Hisham, you're going to start again with this one.
So this one should be a little bit easier. It's about the economy. Who do you think, if you have the power to fix everything, who do you think should be issuing and regulating U.S. currency, and how?
And I think for this one, we're going to start with Mr. Reed.
The Federal Reserve System is the epicenter of corruption in the country and the wealth transfer from the 99% to the 1%. One of the first things I'll do is transfer the Federal Reserve System from a private entity under the Department of the Treasury and break that cycle of corruption. I would also eliminate the national debt and the use of fiat currency. I know how to do it. It's actually been done 600 times in history without failure, and it's really pretty easy if I don't get myself shot by the banking cabal for trying to take away trillions of dollars that they suck out of the people every year. But it can be done. I know how to do it. I will do it. And that will be a very attractive magnet to the people that will help rally the masses to the Libertarian Party for our victory in November, which is guaranteed by me.
That's a big guarantee. And Dr. Feldman, please go.
People talk about our government being $20 trillion in debt, but that only looks at what the government wants you to see on the balance sheet. Look at the fine print. The $20 trillion in debt does not include $200 trillion in assets in offshore energy, doesn't include hundreds of $trillion in land, like most of the state of Nevada. It doesn't include the present value of future taxation, which is at least in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. If we look at the assets, our government holds and controls more than $1 million for every man, woman, and child in the United States. It's no surprise why we have billionaires who want to be president. They want these assets. They actually don't want to control America. They want the assets. As soon as they get them, they're willing to let us be free. We need to stop it. The Federal Reserve is one of the ways of basically manufacturing new stock in our country and giving it away to the banks for free. It must end.
Governor Johnson, please.
Well, I think it's a rigged game. It's absolutely a rigged game, and I would sign legislation abolishing the Federal Reserve if given that opportunity. I think that those functions that the Federal Reserve serves could be done through regional banking. And when it comes to our currency, I would love to be able to sign legislation authorizing competing currency, which I would love to have a currency based in commodity. Now, this is very complex, and I wouldn't want to put the government in charge of how that would work, but if you had a commodity-based currency, keep in mind that you'd be going to the gas pump to buy gasoline, which would be a commodity that would be changing by the second. You're going to be paying for it with a basket of commodities, gold, silver, wheat, soybeans, who knows, that are also going to be fluctuating by the second. So it's very complex, but it seems to me that that would be something very tangible from an asset standpoint to have as a currency.
And Mr. Perry, please have fun with this one.
If I understand the question correctly, it's basically who would build the currency. Well, we already have, I believe, there's about 500 different cryptocurrencies right now. The first one created by an anonymous individual named Satoshi Nakamoto. And I think that there would be more Satoshi Nakamotos. There would be more Bernard von Nothauses. Bernard von Nothaus, for those of you not familiar with him, was the creator of the Liberty Dollar, and he was arrested for counterfeiting, for issuing silver rounds that looked too much like something that the U.S. Mint may have put out at some point in the past, except that his said, "Trust in God, not in God we trust." His had a website on the back and a telephone number, not just, full faith and credit, blah, blah, blah. He wound up going to prison for trying to compete with government money. So what we need to do is get rid of legal tender laws, and then who will build the currency? Everybody that wants to.
And also, And also, just to know, I think I could speak for all 4 candidates saying this, but to the Bitcoin world, you might want to donate to some of these guys. Only $5 for Mark Feldman, though. So the next question goes to Larkin.
Hi.
Skip Josie.
Josie. Sorry.
That's
Josie,
fine.
you're up.
This question actually piggybacks on Hisham's, and some of you briefly touched on this a little. What role do you think the president should have in economic matters, and what experience or knowledge do you have that makes you think you're qualified to manage the United States economy?
And let's start with Darryl Perry on this one.
What role, can you repeat, what role should the president have in economic matters?
Yeah.
None.
Okay.
And what qualifies me? You know better about your economic situation than I do. Businesses know better about their economic situations than I do, and let the market decide.
And I think he knows more than Bernie Sanders about other people's money. So, but Governor Johnson, you're next.
Well, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, so I started a one-man handyman business, grew that to over 1,000 employees. I think I really have an understanding of what it takes to be in business and to survive. Regulation, taxes. As governor of New Mexico, I ran on the notion of just bringing a common sense business approach to state government, but that was going to be smaller government. That was going to be less regulation. That was going to be less taxation. In my 8 years as governor, I did not raise one single penny of tax. That had never happened before. And I advocated for tax reduction that actually occurred after I left office, so that ended up to be a positive. When I was running for president in 2012, they did an analysis of all the presidential candidates and who had the best record on jobs, because Rick Perry was beating his chest that he did. Well, it actually turned out to be me, and my response to that was the same as it was when I was governor. Government doesn't create one single job. I didn't create one single job. The private sector does. But I helped create, I believe, a level playing field to make that happen.
Dr. Feldman?
I do have a master's degree in health finance and management in the Department of Health Policy and Management from Johns Hopkins. But it's a question of what is the role of the president. And it's the president does have a lot of power under the Constitution. It's basically that the president is the chief executive officer, the chief operating officer of the United States. It's his job to keep the government going. The president does not answer to the Supreme Court or to Congress. The president answers to the Constitution of the United States. And I think that under the Constitution, we can shrink our government down to what is necessary and proper, which I'm sure includes giving speeches and giving out medals. Other than that, we'll have to look at. But my balancing credit plan is something which is implementable at the executive level. One of the first things I would do, first day in Congress, I have a balanced budget. I will get delivered to Congress. They can pass it. They can pass another balanced budget. I will sign it. Or they can do continuing resolutions. But if there's no balanced budget, I will put across the board spending caps on every federal agency. Not a single dollar will be added to the debt.
Mr. Reed?
Every time you hear a candidate start off with balancing the budget, I know right away they got no clue. They don't know what they're talking about. The president should implement, and I will, knowledgeable about monetary history, banking, finance, markets, will resurrect capitalism so that there is a viable economy. And that means preventing the Exchange Stabilization Fund from rigging the currency markets, the FOMC from rigging the stock markets, the Federal Reserve from rigging the bond markets. I will reinstate capitalism for the people to engage in enterprises they deem fit to spur economic prosperity in an economy that is founded on capitalism. Thank you.
And Dr. Feldman?
A little rebuttal. It's not hard to balance the budget. I wouldn't be running for president if I didn't think I could balance the budget. I looked into it. You can go to a website, Council for Responsible Federal Budget, crfb.com. But Here's how you do it. The Democrats have already published proposals that cut the deficit in half by cutting money that goes to special interests that support Republicans. The Republicans have proposals that cut the deficit in half by cutting money that goes to special interests that support Democrats. Be bipartisan. Take those cuts, you have a balanced budget, and already every single cut is supported by half the government.
One thing I'd like to follow.
Mark Feldman would be my Secretary of the Treasury.
There's a treasury in anarcho-capitalism. I want to do one little thing on that. A lot of people have said, if you get rid of these special interests, a lot of them are tax loopholes, probably about 80%. Wouldn't that just be a tax increase to some extent? Like if you were to get rid of the loopholes on, let's say, Walmart, Hillary Clinton's company, wouldn't that just raise their taxes if you were to get rid of some of their loopholes?
I think everybody should have loopholes. That's my plan. I think we should let everybody reduce their taxes to zero if they want to support their fellow man in their own ways. So no, companies are under a financial obligation to make money. If they're donating money to political campaigns, it's because they get far more in return. It's good business. We need to end it, and we end it by stop voting for it. We need to take money out of our political campaigns. Our parties need money. Our candidates need votes. And dollars don't vote.
And I think just a quick one-word question for everybody. What would be the
Mr.
first
Reed
thing
wanted
you'd
to
cut?
rebuttal.
Oh, yes,
He wants
Mr.
to
Reed.
The naivety to me is astounding. If you attempt to balance the budget and pull that heroin from the economy, you will slam the U.S. economy into a death spiral, and that will do nothing more than accelerate more and more deficits into an endless trap of complete and utter economic ruination. These candidates have absolutely no clue. Thank you.
So with that, I just have one word question. What would be the first thing you would cut if you were President of the United States? Mr. Reed, quickly, one word. What would be the first thing you'd cut?
The first thing I would cut, I'm not quite sure that I would cut anything. My purpose will be to kill the fiat dollar, and that involves devaluating it way beyond the Federal Reserve has any concept of doing. At the same time, I would be buying mines and mints and restocking the Federal Reserve.
That was a bit over one word.
bullion
Dr. Feldman.
To go through a transition.
I apologize. It's more than one word, but I would cut our expenditures on prison by pardoning 10,000 nonviolent drug offenders on my first day in office.
Governor Johnson.
You're not going to be able to balance the budget without taking on the entitlements, Medicaid and Medicare, which I think can be done with a heart and can be done and absolutely provide for a safety net that there are those that I think genuinely need. That would be also entitlement Medicare, which would be health care for those over 65. I think you devolve that to the states. And military spending. And balancing the federal budget, if everybody takes it on the chin by 20%, if you're looking at a 20% reduction in military spending, that's only going back a few years to achieve that. So there's a dialogue that needs to go along
Mr.
with
Perry,
this. And
what is your
Waser
first thing?
passes one word.
Everything.
I knew he was going to get one word. I knew he was definitely going to get one word. And Hesham, you have the next question.
Okay, so just a caution regarding time. We're getting into heavy questions later, so let's try to keep time in mind. What would you do as president to rein in the power of the executive branch?
Let's see. Let's go with Mr. Reed.
The first thing that I would do is eliminate a military dictator in the executive office. I would define red lines. If they are breached, I would report to Congress and follow the Constitution that the Senate should dictate to the president whatever intervention is desired by the people that controls the Senate. So I would reinstate the Constitution.
And how about we go with Mr. Perry next?
I believe the question was, what as the executive would I do to rein in the power of the executive? Well, I would start by not issuing executive orders to expand the power of the executive. I would then follow that up by vetoing any legislation that expands the power of not just the president, but any executive authority or executive office that is overseen by the president. So when Nancy Pelosi several years ago said, "We have to pass the bill to find out what is in it," she wasn't lying. She was telling the truth, because what the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act did was it gave the Secretary of Health and Human Services basically unfettered authority to write regulation that had the force of law. The Secretary of Health and Human Services is under the executive branch. So that bill and everything else that allows bureaucrats to write rules that have the force of law would be vetoed.
If anyone else on the stage would like to do their Nancy Pelosi imitation, here's your chance. But Governor Johnson, you're next.
Well, reigning in executive power, to me, starts off with not getting ourselves involved in any military conflict without congressional approval. With regard to executive orders, it's the executive runs, in this case, the President of the United States runs the federal government. So executive orders are something that it's a tool. You have to issue executive orders for government to work. Now, if you're in favor of smaller government, if you're in favor of less taxes, if you're in favor of individual freedom and liberty, you're going to love the Libertarian nominee and what they issue when it comes to executive orders. It is 3 branches of government, and rein back executive authority. Look, that's what the courts are for. That's what Congress is for. What you're voting for is somebody that's going to take their philosophy to the hilt. And I did that as governor.
And Dr. Feldman.
The President of the United States, with his executive power, holds the keys to the shackles that Americans are in. And doesn't make us more free to give up those keys. We have to use them. The way to rein in executive power is to transfer the responsibility and authority for those powers from the executive branch to the individual Americans. Let the president be very, very powerful for what he's responsible for, but make him responsible for much, much less. For example, in terms of immigration, which we may speak about, I favor allowing every single American, as a benefit of citizenship, to be able to sponsor refugees. If you can take them, you can sponsor them, you can be responsible for them, you should be able to take them. If people think we should take more refugees, ask them, how many do you want to take? That's the answer.
And Governor Johnson.
So just to clarify very quickly, Mark's idea is terrific. He might actually be able to pull that off with executive orders. Just so you understand that you're going to elect the President of the United States, it's going to be Mark Feldman. He's going to be able to do that through, or move in that direction through executive order.
And Josie has the next question, and I think this is going to be a very popular one with the audience, so every candidate should open up with a yes or a no to this one.
Okay, now the doctor actually already answered this to my delight. But as president, would you pardon all those who are now in federal prison for victimless crimes? And going forward, would you issue the executive orders we just discussed to prevent the prosecution of people for victimless crimes?
Let's start with Mr. Perry for this one.
Yes, absolutely. It would be the 4th thing I do after giving a pardon to Private Chelsea Manning, a pardon to Ross Ulbricht, and dropping all charges against Edward Snowden.
Governor Johnson.
So, as governor of New Mexico, I advocated legalizing marijuana in 1999, and said that I would pardon victimless, nonviolent criminals from jail sentences if they were serving jail sentences. I pardoned a handful because there were only a handful that were in prison, in state prison. That's where I learned that the majority of prisoners in federal prison, over 50% of the prisoners in federal prison, are there because of victimless, nonviolent drug crime. So as President of the United States, this is something that I issued in 2012, I would engage in a process of pardoning all those criminals of victimless, nonviolent crime. It's a great untold story of the prohibition of alcohol that happened after alcohol prohibition was
Okay.
repealed.
And Dr. Feldman.
I want to give a shout out to a journalist in Cleveland, Mr. Mansfield Frazier, a black ex-con who's done wonderful things. He actually has a vineyard in the middle of eastern Cleveland, and he hires ex-cons. And he told me this. He said, you can't just let them out. A lot of the nonviolent criminals are in prison for a reason. It's because they don't have the social structure, they don't have the controls to help them survive on the outside. To just pardon them and send them on the street is not doing them a favor. That's why, although there are millions, I would start with 10,000 because I think that's how many we can have the voluntary private social service systems that can assist them, people who have the family controls. So no, I wouldn't send everybody out because I want to make sure that they have some place to go.
Mr. Reed.
My solution set is comprehensive, sweeping, and integrated, and all of the parts fit together. One of the parts is creating a Green Corps, and nonviolent criminals must be introduced back into society. They would pass through this Green Corps for an appropriate amount of time to reinstill into them law abidingness and citizenship so that they can re-enter and adjust. And it is a Greenpeace solution. It is a solution to depopulate the prison, give them a space where they can rehabilitate both from drug addiction and from antisocial behavior, and quickly released back into society. We don't want to lock these people up. We want to treat them and get them back into society. Thank you.
So you're saying rehabilitation is as important as release?
And I can do it. I'm a Christian.
A very quick follow-up just for the doctor and Mr. Reed. You're assuming that every prisoner who is in a cage because of a nonviolent crime is addicted to something and needs help adjusting to society. Why is that? Why do you assume that?
I don't assume it. I think that each case is individual. You look at the,
But that's not what you just said.
well, then I must.
Would you have every person analyzed and made sure that some people who are capable to leave do leave on appropriate times, and some people
I'm
might
not a
have to stay?
sociologist, I'm not a psychologist, but you take each individual and you basically have to look at them and give them a certain amount of rehabilitation time to adjust back into society. If it's just some guy smoking a dope, man, you let him out. Okay, I mean, if it's just smoking a joint, I mean,
So
come on.
Thank you for clarifying.
So next
Okay.
up, Larkin.
And I would just like, if someone has outpatient surgery and with anesthesia, we don't let them go home unless they have a responsible adult with them, because they're in a compromised situation and it puts them in danger. I'm not saying this should delay anything, but what we need to do is to encourage and to empower the private voluntary systems, the family systems, community systems, religious systems, to help integrate people so we don't send them back into the same situations that brought them into prison in the first place.
That didn't answer my question at all, but we'll just move on.
I think there was some good answers there, but Larkin, you're up.
All right, the other parties are very good at not answering questions people ask. I would ask you all to please actually answer this question. It's philosophy. Do you believe that by voting, people can delegate to public officials the moral right to do things which none of the voters have the right to do themselves?
And I think the person to start off with this question is the only one on this stage who has received votes before, Governor Johnson.
I apologize. Can you rephrase the question?
The short version is, can people delegate rights they don't have?
No.
Okay, and next, how about we do it? We got to admire how quick he was on that one. Next up, let's go with Dr. Feldman.
Just as a correction, it was shortly after I joined the Libertarian Party that I was asked to run for Ohio Attorney General, and I did receive 100,000 votes, more than my friends and family.
I apologize. I was not aware on that.
Now, I think there's a larger issue, and I hope I'm answering your question. A government is not a person. A government has no morality. It's a corporation, just like any other corporations. Only individuals have morals. Only individuals have ethics. So we shouldn't even hold it. It's a question of obeying the rules. And the rules are government cannot infringe on the rights of individuals. The Second Amendment is not there for target practice or hunting or even self-defense. The Second Amendment is part of the Constitution because the right of the individual is supreme over the power of the state.
And how about we go to Mr. Perry for this one? I think you're going to have some fun here.
And I've also received votes. 12 years ago, I was the state treasurer candidate for the state of Pennsylvania and received more votes than the Constitution Party and Green Party candidates combined. Now
we've got some candidates here. I might have been mistaken.
Now, to answer the question about voting to delegate authority, no, you cannot vote to delegate authority that you don't have, but you can vote in self-defense. So if there's a question on the ballot that says, should taxes be decreased, and you vote yes, you should not steal more money from me, then you're attempting to vote in self-defense. It would be akin to if you're walking down the street in South Philadelphia and somebody walks up to you and says, give me all of your money, and you say, how about I only give you half before I kick your ass? Are you then legitimizing the theft? And I would say absolutely not. You're attempting to negotiate in self-defense.
And let's have Mr. Reed on this one.
The Constitution is the defining instrument for all presidents. If you get into theory, you're going to lose the electorate. The Constitution sets forth a representative government for the administration of that government. You can get into the philosophy all you want, but you've got to look at the practical realities. Amen. And that is a representative government. You understand is that I was a lawyer for 25 years and had to live my life in shame being called one. Now I'm going to be a politician. I just can't win.
Is it a step up?
Yeah.
All right. Now we are going to move on to foreign policy, and I think we're going to be a lot better than what you see in the GOP debates when it comes to foreign policy. So, Hesham, you have the first question.
Thank you. So the issue about philosophy is we would like to know from you, what is your philosophy in executing your office? So that's why those questions were heavily on philosophy. And this one is actually also in philosophy. So the U.S. Bill of Rights applies only within the jurisdiction of the United States. Do you believe, is your personal philosophy, how you're going to apply it, that those principles and rights that Americans should have, also everybody else in the world should have, not through force, but is that your philosophy?
And I think we should go with Mr. Reed for this one first.
The Constitution defines rights for American citizens, not for everybody in the world. They get to decide for themselves what kind of rights and systems of governments they desire. It's not up to the U.S. government to enforce rights upon them or take them away. This is more of a philosophy of rights, not the military type of intervention. But I do have a vast knowledge base on geopolitics and military concerns. And I read the Libertarian Party platform, and I saw the word world, and I thought to myself, I thought they're running for the U.S. president. I thought this was a U.S. political party, and there does seem to be some concern about foreign rights. It's their business, not ours.
Just for 10 seconds, would you close down Guantanamo Bay?
I would find an alternative to it. Close down. First of all, I would unite the Russians to solve the problem to eliminate
Dr.
Guantanamo.
Feldman.
I would just wait because that question actually has come up. You have that on your list.
No, I did not have that on the list. No, that was just a quick follow-up because kind of like human rights in general. But
yeah, maybe
Dr.
let's
Feldman,
not
please.
do that anymore.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Your question.
Oh, so the U.S. Bill of Rights has principles and give
For
rights.
the U.S. versus the world.
Correct.
Yeah. I am not an isolationist. I just believe in dropping tourism, education, philanthropy, and free trade on other countries instead of bombs. We have a duty as Americans to help our fellow human beings wherever they are, but it is not a proper role of government. I believe that I will tell people that I am a supporter of Israel. I have family in Israel. It would take me a long time to explain it. However, the correct amount of foreign aid to Israel is zero. I would end all government foreign aid. I would end all government foreign aid, and Israel is a fantastic place to start.
I suppose he just couldn't go with Lindsey Graham and send apple pie and nuclear weapons. Governor Johnson.
Well, so we've grown up with the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and we've come to maybe perhaps take it for granted, the rights and the freedoms that we do have. But golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. When I view when I view others outside of this country, I do have this sense of do unto others as you would have others do unto you, and that constitutionally, although we're not obligated to grant these rights constitutionally, that we should be, in fact, these are, in my opinion, basic human rights that should be respected and I don't want to use the term granted, but respected and administered, if you will.
Mr. Perry.
Every human being, regardless of where on this planet they were born, has the same rights. The question is to what extent various governments recognize those rights. And in this context, I would say that the rights that are supposedly recognized in the U.S. Constitution should be afforded to everyone that finds themselves under the supposed authority of any agent of the U.S. government. That includes people that are being held as prisoners of war by the U.S. government. So the people that are being held in Guantanamo or other secret CIA prisons, they should have the right to a fair trial. They should have the right to the evidence against them. They should have the right to a jury if they seek one. Unfortunately, the U.S. government does not seem to be wanting to grant those rights or recognize those rights.
Thank you. A quick follow-up here. Do you believe that every human being anywhere in the world is of equal worth?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Where we got that cleared up. Josie, you're next, and you have a very popular question this election cycle.
Okay, this this one is important to me. Now, well, and I'm sure a lot of people, are you in favor of welcoming into the United States refugees from all war-torn countries, especially, well, not especially, but including Syria, seeing as it's such a hot-button issue as of late?
And let's start off with Mr. Perry this time.
Absolutely. What I'm not in favor of is the government welfare program that's currently used to bring the refugees in. But I welcome anybody into the United States as long as they can get here using private funding and not using force or threats of force.
Governor Johnson.
I would just echo that completely. That I know a lot of talk right now is about Syria and what is the level of refugees that we should accept from Syria. As President of the United States, I think it would probably take about 4 or 5 minutes with the expertise that would be at the table to understand what our fair share would be of those refugees. But we should at least be taking our fair share of those refugees and all refugees. And this just gets back to also the belief that immigration, not refugees, but immigration is really a good thing, that we are a country of immigrants and that we should be embracing it.
One more quick point. The U.S. government should stop creating refugees to begin with.
There you go.
That's a nice thought. Dr. Feldman.
I can understand the point of view of people saying to the federal government, you know, you broke it, so you got to fix it. But the fact is, they're not helping. Okay? It's not a proper role of government. Government should have no business telling me what kind of guests I want to bring to my home, to my community, as long as I'm willing to take responsibility and to support them. No, the government shouldn't be the government of the United States should not be welcoming refugees. The people of the United States should be welcoming refugees. Thank you.
Mr. Reed?
The American Indians were wiped out. We had a civil war, 150 years of race tensions because of open borders. Immigration is great. We must limit it to allow new immigrants time to assimilate into a culture of democracy, freedom, liberty, and it takes them time. The problem is not Sharia law. It's the acclimation, assimilation into an American culture. The American government has no vested interest in importing refugees per se. The Russians are playing the Shia, the U.S. is playing the Sunnis, causing problems. Yes, you could say we're causing the refugee problem, but generally immigration should be limited for purposes of assimilating new immigrants properly. Thank you.
Unless any of the panelists would like to do any follow-ups to that, because there was a lot of interesting words there. Larkin, you have the next question.
Okay, my next question is really just a specific example of what Hisham just asked. Assuming that you oppose warrantless home searches here in the U.S., do you have the same opinion of U.S. troops in foreign countries doing random door-to-door searches of people's homes, purportedly looking for insurgents?
And that should go to Mr. Reed to start off with.
Red lines must be articulated and specific, and that is basic fallacy of our inept State Department. Once you articulate the red lines, you report to Congress if there's a breach, and it is then up to Congress to dictate to the Senate to what extent the U.S. should intervene militarily or otherwise. In terms of military going around with warranted searches, to me, we're talking about U.S. probable causes for warrant searches according to American law. It is not applicable in foreign countries. What is applicable is our foreign policy, which must be defined and followed pursuant to the Constitution.
Dr. Feldman.
The question that I have is, when human rights are being violated in Baltimore, in Ferguson, in other areas around the country, when should we invite North Korean soldiers to come into our country to try to make things right? It's not right. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We don't want to have other countries militarily intervening in our country. They don't want us in theirs. Thank you.
Governor Johnson.
Well, this is one of those answers where, gosh, this guy isn't really answering the question that I asked. But
Another one?
yeah, another one.
Oh, we're going to try and get answers out of you.
I think there is a very real Islamic terrorist threat that exists in the world, but I don't think it's as a reason of our military interventions, but our military interventions are making the situation worse. So let's stop with boots on the ground. Let's not have the situation in the first place. Let's stop with boots on the ground. Let's stop dropping bombs. Let's stop flying drones that are killing thousands of innocent civilians, that are making this Islamic terrorist threat much worse than it already is.
Mr. Perry, I believe the
Actually,
question...
sorry, Dr. Feldman has to.
Just a brief comment. I agree with the governor's comments, but I object to referring to our children who are fighting overseas as footwear. They're not boots on the ground. They're people. They're our kids. Thank you.
And let me tell you, let me make one thing really clear.
That guy
As
over there.
President of the United States, I am not going to send troops on the ground, our kids, to lose their limbs or to die over there for causes that I have to tell you are not making any sense to me.
That got a lot of energy in the room. Thank you.
I believe the question was
Quick
about
follow-up, Mr. Perry, please go.
surveillance of people in foreign countries and should
Knocking
the U.S.
down
government
doors.
do it. And I would say that if it's wrong for the U.S. government to do it within the United States, and it most certainly is, then it's wrong for the U.S. government to do it across an imaginary line or across the Atlantic Ocean or across the Pacific Ocean. So the short answer is absolutely not. The U.S. government should not be involved in any sort of surveillance anywhere in the world.
I think that got a lot of applause. Any panelists that have any thoughts they'd like to weigh in on this? Or no? Okay, so Hesham, you're up next.
So, carrying on from this, what is the best way to protect the United States from foreign enemies? And be mindful that when you answer the question, what are you going to do to overcome the influence of the military-industrial complex?
Mr. Perry, you should have some interesting views, please.
The best way to, what was the phrase you used?
How best do you protect the United States from foreign enemies?
The best way to protect the U.S. from foreign enemies is to stop creating foreign enemies, and you do that by stopping the drone bombing of innocent people in places like Yemen, Somalia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, people going to weddings, people coming home from weddings, people just going to the grocery store, and because they're driving a Toyota pickup that some suspected militant may or may not have ever been near, you just wind up dropping a drone bomb on them, and statistics show that 90% of people in what are supposedly targeted drone strikes are actually civilians. The term targeted drone strike is supposed to mean we know exactly who's being killed, but 90% of the time, not only is it not the person, it's somebody that is not even suspected of being a militant. So you stop creating the enemies.
Governor Johnson.
So I don't think we've created the problem that exists, meaning our military interventions have not created this problem, but our military interventions are making these situations much, much worse. So what we need to do is contain what's happening, and I'm talking about Islamic terrorism. We need to contain what's happening in the Middle East, and we need to cut off funding to terrorism, something that the Saudi Arabia and the Emirates have taken a lead on, and that should be our tactic. Brains, not boots on the ground, not dropping bombs, and not drone strikes.
Dr. Feldman.
There was a time when our weapons manufacturers made weapons to support our war efforts. Now we manufacture war efforts to support our military industry.
Very good answer.
Eisenhower warned us back then. The military-industrial complex is too powerful and does not have an incentive to have a peaceful world. It's not good for their business. We have to stop it, and the way we stop it is to get their money out of our campaigns. Again, the Democrats and Republicans are not spending $2 billion each to represent us. Thank you.
Mr. Reed.
The analysis displayed to me is incredibly shallow. Я хочу Саша и Russia будет очень хороша друга. You go to the top. You make friends between Russia and China, the EU and the US, so they stop playing the Shia and the Sunnis against each other. The industrial military complex is old. The new driver are the transnationals and the banking cabals trying to exploit foreign powers, foreign countries to exploit resources and people. That's the modern driver. American culture, Christian Judeo origin wants to help. You couple that with the greed driver, the transnationals, and then you get the intervention. Understand the problem, then you can shut it down. Thank you.
So a quick follow-up for Governor Johnson. You mentioned that the wars or the American intervention did not start what is happening there. Are you aware that the CIA funded and planned the coup in Iran in 1953 to overthrow Mossadegh, who was elected democratically, in order to make BP take over the oil of Iran, and things started from then?
I'm going to take your word for it.
No, it's documented. That's what
Yes,
it's documented. It's now declassified.
Mr. Reed would also like to answer that. You're not like that, please.
I'm sorry, my name is Mr. Reed. In the Ukraine, for example, Hillary takes millions of bucks from a Russian oligarch. The Western Ukrainians rise up, boot out a duly elected president. The Cold War starts. You've got to watch out for the greed of the transnationals and her Spectra Foundation that is driving a lot of these problems under the surface. Thank you.
And Josie, you have the next question.
Okay, very quickly now, Governor Johnson, that you've been made aware that the government has created a lot of problems overseas. Do you retract your answer that we in quotes, are responsible for a lot of the terrorism and anger at the United States?
Well, I think that the roots of this go back further than 1950.
It was just a yes or no question. Do you believe that in some way, shape, or form, now that you've been made aware and you said that you take his word for it, will you retract your answer that the United States government / military industrial complex is not responsible for terrorism in any way, shape, or form?
No, I'm saying we're making it worse, but the origin
You're
of
talking
it.
around it.
This is why we have expert panelists. Would anyone else like to make a comment on this?
Yes, I
Mark.
would. Yes, I would.
Can you pinpoint me the root of when Islamic terrorism started? And if that's the root, and then yes, then I stand educated.
So the word Islamic terrorism gives the connotation that it's built in the religion, and that's very problematic to start with. There is Muslim terrorism. Muslims do terrorism as Americans or Christians or Jews do terrorism. So let's start with proper, terms, because this is very, it creates, this type of language creates more enemies.
I think everyone here wants to make some comments on this. So panelists, are you okay with everybody going around on this?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Mr. Perry, please.
The global war on terror is nothing more than a drunken bar fight with missiles and bombs. Nobody knows who threw the first punch. Nobody remembers who threw the first punch. Nobody remembers how long ago the first punch got thrown. But people are still throwing punches, and people are still swinging bar stools. And the way you win a bar fight is not to participate. The way you win the global war on terror is to not participate. It's like in the movie War Games, where the computer at the end says the only way to win is to not play the game.
Governor Johnson, we were going to go around for this one. Governor Johnson, would you like to make any follow-ups on that? Okay, and Dr. Feldman.
As a believer in individual empowerment, we also have individual responsibility. We should not forget that people who are primarily responsible for terrorism are terrorists. Now, the people who are responsible for fomenting terrorism are the people who are responsible. But we can't take responsibility. We should not absolve anyone of the responsibility for what they do. How to fight terrorism is to recognize its power and to take it away. The power in terrorism is causing terror. If we're not afraid, if we look at this objectively, we can avoid it. I'm sorry. We have 30 seconds more. If we can take away the terrorist ability to make us afraid, they're not terrorists anymore. They're just a bunch of militants going around the world, killing some people, but not achieving anything but making themselves look bad. Like Republicans.
And I'd also like to mention that Dr. Feldman is of Jewish descent, and it's very good that you're making these statements towards, I think, a very positive aspect of the Muslim community. So I think he deserves some praise for that. But Mr. Reed, please.
Our Lord Jesus Christ conquered hearts and minds through love. Muhammad did it by the sword. The Muslim religion or culture is a little more intolerant than the Christian religion, but the big problem are the power players, the Russians and the Americans, playing the Sunni and Shia for selfish global control, and the transnationals and the global banking cabal going in there and profiting and exciting these groups into terrorism. Thank you.
This section of the debate might not have had the same friendliness and agreement as when we were talking about abolishing taxes. But Larkin, I think you have the next question.
No, actually, that's me.
Oh, she had.
You also like the
Yeah,
Okay, that was an add-on question.
It should have been
Okay,
just
that was
a
an
yes
add-on. I wasn't
or
sure
no.
if you were sacrificing
It was
that.
a yes or no kind of a thing.
Okay.
And since I scrapped one earlier, we'll make up for it here. Now, do you believe that people outside of the United States have the right not to be detained without being charged with any crime and to be free from cruel and unusual punishment? And how would your answer apply to the torture, such as waterboarding and force feeding, that has occurred at Guantanamo Bay, which is filled with prisoners, the majority of which have been charged with zero crime?
So let's start off with Mr. Perry for this one.
The first part was a yes or no. Do I believe that?
Do you believe it? Yeah. Do you believe that they have the right? It's basically the same question as before. You know, not
Yes,
to be
they
detained.
absolutely have the right to not be detained without charge. Unfortunately, the U.S. government does not recognize such right, and the U.S. government infringes on people's rights worldwide, and that includes by torturing them. And what would I do if elected to end the torture is I would, well, first I would tell everybody don't do that. And secondly, I would actually wind up charging them with war crimes if they did.
Okay.
Dr. Zimbardo, who ran the Stanford prison experiment, was actually an expert witness in the trial of Abu Ghraib, and he testified that, well, they don't have to be told to torture because I ran Abu Ghraib 30 years ago, and it was known as the Stanford prison experiment. If you give people vague instructions, they will do horrible things. So you have to give them explicit instructions not to wind up torturing.
Governor Johnson.
Well, this is an example where, as President of the United States, you could issue an executive order that there will be no more torture. And that is an executive order that I would issue, and that there wouldn't be detainment without being charged. And let's also understand that this is very complex also. What I faulted Obama on when he came out and he said, look, I'm going to close Guantanamo, and it still hasn't been closed. Well, the reason is that there are individuals in these prisons that if returned to their country of origin, they would be killed if they were returned to their country of origin. And yet we're not, there should be due process. There's not. That's what I wish he would have engaged in. But he never acknowledged that Guantanamo exists for a problem population that has to be dealt with. If Guantanamo gets shut down tomorrow, you're still going to have that situation. I would act to resolve that we do offer a due process, something that is not happening and it's not being proposed by Obama currently.
Feldman.
Short answer, rights, yes, torture, no. Next, Guantanamo, close it yesterday. Now, the next question is this, what do we learn from this? Don't listen to me. Everything I tell you could be a lie. Okay, we're all running for office. We say things that you want to hear, but so don't pay attention to it. Use your brains. Use your resources. Find out your own information. Look at where people are getting their money from. How could a community organizer, a black fellow from the south side of Chicago who promises to close Guantanamo Bay, 8 years later it's still going? Why? Because he's a politician. Don't listen to him. Follow the money.
And next up, Mr. Reid.
Yes, I believe that all human beings should have a certain level of liberty and human rights. The play has always been people wanting more liberty and freedom, governments wanting more control. It's the way it has always been, and it has cycled from totalitarianism to freedom over the ascent of mankind. In terms of Guantanamo Bay, you've got to start at the top. You've got to get Russia, the US, China, EU on the same team resolving disputes and make peace with the Muslim world so that they are not excited into terrorism, so that you don't have to maintain a prison like Guantanamo for people that are plotting against the United States. Thank you.
30-second rebuttal, please.
Go ahead.
Derek, it's not a cycle. From the dawn of man to today, there has been an inexorable movement towards increasing the freedom of the individual, because that is our natural way. When we went from clan warfare to feudal lords to kings to constitutional republics to whatever we're going to see in the future, there has been a growing and growing empowerment of the individual. Libertarianism isn't just possible, it's inevitable. But we need to do what we can do to expedite to happen now. Thank you.
Mr. Reed.
5 seconds. So apparently we are more free today than we were in 1776.
Black people, yes. Women, yes. For the vast majority of the population, yes. And but we're not as free as we're going to be.
So due to some time constraints, we're going to do one more question until concluding statements. Larkin, you have the final question on this.
Should we decide who gets the last one?
Actually,
Just a second. We'll
they're-
decide who gets the
the
last
panelists are having some fun, so all admire the candidates right here. Governor Johnson wore some interesting shoes, as
We
you
have
can
one
see
question
below.
left, so yeah.
Okay.
That's because he is running for president.
And you have, and you have, and you and Mr. Reed both have some very nice glasses, and Mr. Perry, you have some very nice buttons. So you're all very snazzily dressed today.
Thank you.
And what do the buttons say?
Hold on, say that again.
What do the buttons say?
Well, I have one that says Guns and Weed, which is an excellent documentary if you've never seen it. I also have a Darrell W. Perry for President pin right above that. I'm wearing a Silk Road pen in honor of the political prisoner Ross Ulbricht. I have my Libertarian Party Life member pin below that. On the right side, I've got a Bitcoin Not Bombs lapel
Okay.
pin
And-
and a pin for the
And
Shire
I believe
Society.
our moderators have the final question.
Thank you. This is for Governor Johnson, but I would like also to hear everyone else. Some pseudo-experts and hate mongers have been promoting fabrications and stereotypes about Islam and Muslims since and even before 9/11. Governor Johnson, you made some statements about opposing Sharia and banning the burqa, which is an article of clothing that some Muslim women wear. Who advises you on these matters? Where do you get your information from? And since Sharia is that important that you've been talking about it a lot, can you just name maybe the 5 foundational maxims of Sharia?
Before I seeing that you were on the panel this evening, I actually Googled, and I would ask everybody in here, just Google Sharia law versus the U.S. Constitution. And what you're going to find is that it's the antithesis of the U.S. Constitution.
Can
That's
you
what
give
you're
an
gonna
example?
find. Women's rights,
What about it?
that women are not granted the same rights under Sharia law.
That's absolutely false.
I would just ask you all to Google what I just said and read what
So who
comes up.
advises you, Governor? Who advises you on these matters? Where do you get your information from? Google?
There's also a YouTube video you can find on Google that says that I have been disappeared. So, I mean, we can Google anything and find anything.
30-second rebuttal.
Well, you're
Oh, you'll be
talking
up
about the
next for this.
antithesis of the U.S. Constitution. So penalties allow for death for being gay, for example.
No, sir, that is wrong, and I asked you for a meeting to discuss this.
I think
and
that we
never
can
had.
organize this after the debate, but we are on a tough schedule.
I would love
this
to
is-
have
but
that
this is-
meeting.
yeah,
I would
this
love
is-
to
this
have
is
that
an
meeting, but this is
important
what's
issue.
happening.
It is
Excuse
an
me for a
important issue,
second.
but we are on a tight
This is
schedule.
an important issue. If you are a libertarian candidate, how could you call for banning something to start with?
Well, first of all, banning the full burqa when asked the question, it was a mistake to ban the full burqa because what you'd end up with is you'd end up banning Thanksgiving Day parade with Mickey Mouse in it because they'd be wearing a mask. You could charge me because I'm wearing. But my reason behind it was to make sure that the woman behind the full face burqa has not been beaten up because of the allowance of that.
Okay, I think we're
occurring.
on tight schedule, so Mr.
Thank
Rita,
you.
would you go next for this question? Mr. Rita, please.
I'm not an expert on the Quran. I do know one thing. Every single Muslim that I have ever met have been wonderful, stand-up people. They've been here a while. They've assimilated into our culture, and I love every one of them. Just bring them in at a reasonable pace, give them time to assimilate, and we can all live together very well. Thank you.
Dr. Feldman.
Well, I think I've always been a supporter of Gary Johnson. He's the only presidential candidate I ever voted for. However, this whole ban the burqa Sharia phobia is one big shovel-ready project. However, I understand it, and I can see it, but it's a question of not having enough information. And sure, you can Google the Quran and versus the Constitution, but you can also Google
Not the Quran, Sharia law.
or Sharia law versus the Constitution. But you could also look at fatwas against theocracy. There are very strong sects within, especially I believe it's the Shia, who believe that religion does not belong in politics. Religion is to purify yourself and not to be involved in world affairs. And these are the people who are the opposition for a lot of the theocratic rulers trying to take control in the Middle East. We are not helping by attacking them. Thank you.
Mr. Perry.
There's a Muslim maxim that says there shall be no coercion in deen. Deen is generally translated to mean faith, meaning that you cannot coerce someone in matters of faith. One could look at the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, they could look at the Talmud, they could look at the Torah, and you could find things that are absolutely horrible. If I were to wear a cotton wool blend shirt under Levitical law, I should be stoned. If not stoned as in smoking weed.
It's wool and linen, actually.
If I were to grow multiple crops in the same field, then there are penalties for that as well. So you could look at any religious text and find horrible things. Regarding Sharia, just like the Levitical law, only applies to those that consent to live under that, and it does not apply to anyone else, and there is no coercion in deen.
Thank you.
I think that with the Muslim community, we do not want to be in the Libertarian Party, Donald Trump. So I would ask everybody here to just say to the Muslim community, you are welcomed, you are respected, you are free. Would everybody be willing to do that?
You are welcome. You are, what was the?
Respected.
Respected. Everything he just said, I've got a horrible
You are
short-term
free.
memory. Everything he just said, I completely agree with.
And this is for the 10 million Muslim Americans who have one of the lowest crime rates in the world.
Yes, and I encourage you to look into the Muslims for Liberty. It's a wonderful organization.
Governor?
As Americans, we absolutely respect freedom of religion. No ifs, ands, or buts. And when it comes to Muslims practicing their religion, we absolutely, categorically support that.
Dr. Feldman.
I agree. I mean, it is a fact. If there's one thing we can learn from the militant communists.
This was intended to be more of a you are welcomed, you are free, not a whole commentary.
Yes, I'm sorry. You're welcome, you're free. However, if you're a terrorist,
You're not.
Yeah, we will fight you. Well, whatever religion you are.
Okay.
But other than
Mr.
that,
Reed?
yes, you're welcome.
Mr. Reed?
Perhaps many in Muslim countries are indoctrinated into a violent mythology. If they come here in too great a numbers, they tend to huddle together and sustain that. Immigration must be controlled, so allow them the time to assimilate into American culture of democracy, liberty, freedom, and capitalism.
And with that, for concluding statements, we're running short on time, so please give your 30-second elevator pitch to the world. Why should you be the Libertarian Party nominee? And let's start off with Darryl Perry.
When I first joined the Libertarian Party in 1999, it was proudly proclaimed as the party of principle. Over the last 17 years, the Libertarian Party has become a party of watered-down messages and half measures. And I believe that the Libertarian Party should once again be that party of principle. The Libertarian Party should have a presidential candidate who will, as boldly as possible, as loudly as possible, and as often as possible, proclaim the ideas of liberty as consistently as possible. Not advocate watered-down messages, not advocate half measures, but advocate maximum freedom every time.
Okay. Governor Johnson.
Government is too big, it tries to accomplish too much, it spends too much, it takes our tax money that we could be spending ourselves. It's our own freedom, it's our own liberty. We also have an erosion of civil liberties in this country. We need to stand up for individual freedom and liberty and the notion that you and I can dictate our own futures as long as those futures, as long as our actions don't harm others in any way whatsoever.
Dr. Feldman.
Don't believe in free public school, don't believe in free anything, and don't believe in free freedom. Freedom isn't free. We have to fight for it. We have to fight to protect it. We have to fight to attain it. And the reason is it's not so much about freedom, it's about control. Control doesn't just come with laws, it also comes through fear, through hatred, and the way to bring peace in this world isn't through a strong military, it's through economic cooperation, tolerance, and mutual understanding.
Mr. Reed.
I am the only candidate that can translate the libertarian message into a form that will be appealing to 90% of the Americans and offer a solution set that will attract 90% of Americans. I'm the only libertarian candidate who can and would win saving the country from social chaos, economic ruination, and eventual global war and hundreds of millions of deaths. You're going to have a heavy responsibility in Florida, and it's going to be on you because my job will be done. Thank you.
And with that, I think the candidates all deserve a round of applause. Now the panelists do. Them, come on. And you guys, you came out here, so you do as well. We're doing a straw poll in the back, but please, ready, set, go. And Ken, would you like to get up?
Thank you very much.
Whew, 2 hours went quick. And you know what? I have 3 questions for you and 1 statement to make. The first question is for everybody. Did you have a good time? Yeah. The second question, and I know I'm preempting something here, at our business meeting earlier today, the question came up, should we have a straw poll before and after? And you know what? I don't want to count in the back. I would like to hear your response to these people. So I want your opinion of each one, and I'm going to run down their names alphabetically. What did you think of Dr. Feldman? What did you think of Governor Johnson? What did you think of Darryl Perry? What did you think of Mr. Reed? All right, that was my second question. Now I have a third question, but this one is for the benefit of the panelists. Then I have a question for you. How many of you are going to the National Convention? How many hands? Let's raise them high. There you go. Okay, they're my 3 questions. Now my announcement. This is the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania. Thank you for participating, but it doesn't end here, because down on the first floor, if you face the main desk, off to the left in the Whitman room, the Montgomery County Hospitality Suite we're down there. We're going to continue this discussion. Everybody who's on stage, come on down. We want you there. For the rest of you, we're asking for a $15 donation if you can afford it to come on in. We have some fine beer. Who likes IPAs? We have fine conversation. Typically, we go to about 3, 4, 5 in the morning, so if you have to go do something in the room, come on back down. This is our 19th year at the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania, doing our hospitality suite. Please come join us. I have some questions of the panelists, so it's going to be a good time. So let me close out the program. On behalf of the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania, thank you for coming. Thank you for participating. Thank you to our panelists, but especially thank you for the candidates. I've run for high political office. I know what a sacrifice they're making just to be here, let alone campaigning for liberty. Thank you all. We'll see you at National Convention.